In Channel Chimp, select the Auto Add button. Now on the gamepad, we'll move the right stick up or down. Click Auto Add again to deselect it. In the sidebar, we'll set the minimum to 2 and the maximum to -2. And for the Chimp ID, I'll call it Jump. In Modo, I have the basic LXO scene that accompanies this tutorial loaded. And in the sidebar, I'll select the cube item. And for the properties, right-click on the Position Y transform channel and choose Connect to Chimp. We'll select the Chimp ID of Jump. Next, we'll press Moto's play for the timeline to ensure the smoothest performance. And as I move the gamepad joystick up and down, the cube is moving up and down in Moto. Great. So now I'll press the record button in Channel Chimp to start recording a take. I'll go down, down, up, up, down, down. For this take, I'll go up, hold, then up, hold again. I'll click the record icon again to stop recording. And you can see down here in the Channel Chimp record buffer area, we have 2 takes, which are denoted by these darker lines. Now when I hover my mouse over the top and click, I can select the first take, highlighted in yellow, or if I hover over here and click, I can select the second take. Each of these takes is 5 seconds in length in the record buffer. And the reason for that is because of the range we have set in Modo. So if I come over here into Modo's timeline settings, you can see that we currently have a range from frame 0 to 120 set in Modo with a frame rate of 24 frames per second. So that gives us a 5-second timeline range. Now in Channel Chimp, when I press play, I can see this second take, up, hold, and up, hold. Let's select the first take instead and press play. And this will be the one that goes down, down, up, up, down, down. I can press the loop button to keep playback looping. So let's press play again. Because loop is selected, it's going to keep looping the playback over and over again. Let's press stop. If I hover lower in the timeline, you can actually select smaller increments. So right now we're selecting, by 1 second. If I hover my mouse over the end of the yellow range, I can click and drag to trim my out point, or I can hover over the beginning and then click and drag to trim my in point. So I can create whatever selection range I wish. And if I hover my mouse over the middle and the hand icon appears and I click and drag, I can move the entire range. So for example, let's go there and press play and see what happens. So I'm seeing the first take. Now it's going to keep going into the second take as well because I have that selected. Okay, I like the second take in this case, so I'm going to hover over the top and click to select that second range. Let's just watch it one more time. This is the one where we go up and hold, and then up and hold again. Great. So to send keys to Modo, we click this icon in Channel Chimp, the Send Keys icon. And now over in Modo, you'll notice that although our timeline is playing, we're not seeing anything happening. And that's because Modo is still listening to live input from this gamepad. So you can see I can move the joystick up and down and the cube's still moving up and down. It's not looking at the keys, it's looking at my live input. So what I want is for Modo to stop listening to the live input from Channel Chimp. And to do this in Channel Chimp, I can click this little icon at the end of the channel. It looks like an arrow. When I click it, now you'll see the animation happening in Modo for the keys that we sent. Another way you can do this is if you right-click in the channel area of Channel Chimp, there's an option to start all the listeners. So that will re-enable the listeners for all the channels that we may have. And now we're back to live input. Or I can right-click and say stop all listeners. And now all the listeners are stopped and Modo is using its internal values, in this case the animation keys that we set. But using the icon at the end of the channel lets you enable or disable listeners on a channel by channel basis, however you wish. All right, let's stop Moto's playback for a moment and we'll maximize the Moto window. And here I'll just view the graph editor. Now if I right click on the position Y transform channel for the cube and I go down to select input items, we can see the keys that have been sent to the channel chimp modifier. As I scrub here, we can now see the animation happening. And we can manipulate our keys, change the slopes, do all the key editing that you might want to do to finesse the animation. And when we save this scene, it will save all our animation, and we don't even need to have Channel Chimp loaded in order to work with the animation keys. I'm going to minimize the graph editor again, and I'll minimize Moto's window back. And just to note that for the purposes of these demonstrations, I've got both the Channel Chimp window and the Moto window open here so you can see them both at the same time, but you don't have to work that way. You can actually have Channel Chimp on a second screen if you have two monitors. You can minimize it while you're recording to get a better view of the action in Moto in a larger window. So this is just for the purposes of this type of demonstration tutorial. Okay, so let's add another channel. So I'm going to go up and click Auto Add again. And this time I'm going to move the left stick to the side. I'll click Auto Add again to deselect it. And for this channel, I'm going to set the minimum to -2 and the maximum to 2. And we'll call the chimp ID Runner. Back in Moto, I'm going to enable visibility for the sphere item. And with sphere item selected, we'll come down and right-click on the Position X transform channel and choose Connect to Chimp and select the Runner Chimp ID. All right, let's press play for Moto's timeline. Now as I move my left stick on the gamepad, I can move the sphere from side to side. Great, let's record a take. So I'm going to press the record button. We'll start with the sphere to this side, and then when the sphere goes up, it'll run underneath. Let's try that again. Goes up, we run underneath. Goes up, we run underneath again. One more time, run underneath, and run underneath. All right, let's stop recording. I think that third take felt like the best one, so I'm going to select it, and I'll press play so we can see it. You'll notice there's a problem here now. Because as we watch the takes of the sphere running under the jumping cube, the playback of Channel Chimp is not synchronized with Moto's timeline playback. And that's because the play button in Chimp plays back the selected range of the record buffer without regard to anything that Moto may be doing. But in this case, we want to see our performance synchronized with the animation in Moto. So to do this, we're going to stop the playback and we're going to use this button, which is the Lock to Moto Timeline button in Channel Chimp. So let's select that. And now what this is doing is Moto's timeline becomes the master. For example, if I stop playback in Moto, you can see that the playback of the record buffer range in Channel Chimp has stopped. If I rewind to the start, rewound our playback head in Channel Chimp, and when I press play, everything is perfectly synchronized from the performance that we created, and the sphere is running underneath the cube. And if I click in different places in Moto's timeline, you can see that it's moving the corresponding position in the Channel Chimp buffer. Great, so that's working really well. You should note that if we had an arbitrary range set in Chimp, if we had an arbitrary range set in Chimp, for example, let me just click and drag my range. We'll set a different endpoint. So you might wonder, well, what's going to happen now? Well, the way this works is that the beginning, the very first part of the yellow range, will be considered to correspond to the beginning of Moto's timeline. So now if I rewind and press play, you can see our playback is going to start from the beginning here to try to match up. Now obviously that's going to be a little bit odd. We're probably going to prefer to choose an actual take that corresponds to the same range. In order to resume regular functionality of Chimp, let's click the Lock to Moto Timeline button again to return back to normal.